John Miglautsch for the WDMA and the International Society for Strategic Marketing. I'm going to shock you today. I hope I knock your socks off, because I have uncovered the greatest illustration of the power of direct marketing in the past 20 years, if not ever, in the history of direct marketing. The question is, did direct marketing swing the election? That's a preposterous claim. That's insane. You're sitting back thinking, it can't possibly be direct marketing. Well, let me highlight the story. It's all in my article that I recently posted on LinkedIn. It's on the WDMA.org, WDMA.org, along with this video. But the article itself will be there with all the links I'm going to mention and several more from Forbes and from AP and a number of other sources. And I highly recommend you read those sources, because this is so shocking. It's unbelievable. And it's true. And you need to grasp the power of direct marketing. You need it for your company. And I am committed for the rest of my life to tell the story of the power of direct marketing. I have 100 illustrations from my own life, but this one tops them all. So let's get into the story. First of all, obviously, we know that from 2012, there was a great deal of acclaim given to the Obama campaign for their use of big data. If we look back into, say, March, here's NBC News. It says, Donald Trump's campaign far behind on critical data operation. And it talks about the opponent, Hillary Clinton, has all this data. Has data. Data is how campaigns identify potential voters. It's become extremely sophisticated in recent years. And I'm not going to read every article because it gets crazy. But it just goes on. Obama got the votes much more so than his data processing machine. And I think the same is true with me. That's what Trump said. And Trump basically downplayed the whole data aspect of his campaign. Scientific American ran a great story about what analytics happened in 2012 and what Hillary was doing to really, really analyze, but not just to analyze. And this is the important part of this article. It says that she was using analytics for voter persuasion. And that kind of sets the stage. See, the problem with polls and the problem with analytics is it all relies on historical data, right? So I might be an upper income homeowner, but maybe I got laid off. Maybe I lost my job. Maybe I lost my home. Okay, so if the data is too out of date, it might not apply to me. I might be angry. I might, want to vote for somebody different. Who knows? Or maybe I got a promotion and maybe I want to switch the other way, right? But the fact is, it's all historical data. So what the claim in this article of Scientific American was that the Clinton campaign was able to use data in a predictive way to actually persuade voters. And really, this is based on what they knew about the Obama campaign. Okay? And so it's a very, very interesting article, right? I think one of the things that intrigued me very early on was that at NMOA, which I'm going to be going to again this year in March, often we've had Alex Vogel. And Alex is like a political consultant. And he comes in and tells us who he thinks is going to win. And he said, as I remember, if I were the Democratic nominee, if I were Hillary Clinton, who's the presumptive nominee, and this is back in March, he said, I would be very happy waking up the day after the Democratic convention, because I know that all I have to do is basically win Florida or win Ohio or win Michigan. I mean, win any of a bunch of states. And I'm almost there already. The Democrats started with about 190 electoral votes right off the bat. And Florida with 39 gets you right up to 230, and one more state, is all that was necessary. That's what he said. But he said one scary thing, two scary things in his talk. He said one thing that might cause some pause in that was that the turnout in the Republican primaries was significantly higher than it had been for the 2012 election or the 2008 election. And that generally does have some predictive force. Now, of course, part of it was because if I were a Hillary supporter, I pretty much knew I could vote for one of the Republican candidates. And if you remember, you may not, but if you do, you remember there was a darling of the media. There was a candidate who didn't even go to the debate and had CNN gave him his own special opposite the debate. So don't think Trump doesn't, he had some love for CNN back in the day, right? But what we learned from WikiLeaks was that was partly because everybody thought Trump was the weakest candidate. He had no experience, and he was kind of, saying crazy things and all the rest. And I'm not going to get into that. But the point is, Alex said that there was a pretty big turnout for the Republican primaries, more than the Democratic primaries. And secondly, he said, we keep track of the amount of spending per delegate to the convention. And he said, Donald Trump has set a new record for spending the very, very least money per delegate ever, since we've been tracking this for 35 or some years. He said he is unbelievably underspent every other candidate ever, which was interesting. And it intrigues me. It intrigued me then. It intrigues me to this day because he did the same thing in the presidential campaign. Now, how did he do it? So I was determined after the election to find out. Well, there was a Bloomberg article that came out in October. So it's just a week or two before the election. And, I missed it at the time, but I saw it when I'm starting to look around, and it said there's this guy, this Brad Parscale. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but he was in the trailer at the debate. He was actually doing tweets for Trump, and they have this very, very lengthy article that gives his background, that he went out to Silicon Valley and learned a program out there and did a startup out there. And when 2008 came along, it crashed. He went back home to San Antonio and literally went door to door in the industrial parks and would hang out in Barnes and Noble. And if people were pulling web development books off the shelf, he would tap them on the shoulder and say, "Would you like some help with that?" Well, one day, through networking or whatever, Trump International Realty called him and asked him to do a website. And he bid $10,000, which probably got their attention because it was so cheap. And then he did one for the winery, and he did one for some other things. And when Trump thought about running, before he really announced or anything, Brad did a preliminary site for $1,500. And so how, okay, John, when are you going to get to the direct marketing part? Well, Brad was a self-taught marketer, a self-taught direct marketer. And so let's go back to the map here. Here is the baseline map. Here's the 258 that are pretty much for sure. That was pretty much what Alex said. And if we looked at best case for Trump, the best he could get is 265, which you need 270. So it's just, there's no way he's going to get there. There's no path. There's no path to winning the election, is what they had said. This is the day before the election. This is in Politico, or Politicus USA. And so here's the best scenario for Hillary, 355 to 182 for Trump. And you recognize some of those things. Here's the most likely scenario for Election Day 321, which is a huge margin of victory and very, very comfortable, right? It didn't work out that way. So if you go back to the Bloomberg article, it talks about how they said, Brad, why don't you do the main one? When they were in the primaries, when they were in the primaries, they had Brad start testing stuff. When there was the rally that was canceled in Chicago, Brad wrote his own ticket sales software so that people would have to give their phone number and it would be verified, text you back if you wanted to go to a rally, so they would no longer be just flooded with people that really didn't want to be there. Let's just say, okay. Anyway, so what did they do? This is the scary part. This is where the power comes in. They sold hats. They sold hats. They sold signs. They sold bumper stickers. They even sold credit cards. You could get a credit card. I didn't know any of this before the election. You could get a credit card with the rebate money going to Donald Trump's organization. I mean, they needed money. Everybody thought Trump had plenty of money, but he didn't have $600 million to throw at this thing. So they wanted to make this as self-liquidating as possible. That is never done. I've been involved with political campaigns to a limited, very, very limited extent since I was about 8 years old. And I don't remember ever buying a sign. We used to go door to door asking people if we could put them up. We never said, and could you give us $20 for this? Never, not even once. Not in all the campaigns, Democrat or Republican, have I ever had to pay for a sign. And we have gotten plenty of signs, some of them signed by the candidates. Anyway, the point is that they allocated their resources by where the sales were growing, what headlines did better, did worse, what topics, right? Okay. Does that sound like junk mail? Does that sound like direct marketing? They, in fact, used the Facebook. Facebook has a little thing, most people don't know about it, where you can send as few as a dozen or two of your customers or subscribers. You can load their emails up, and Facebook will try to connect them and see what their geodemographic profile is. And Brad used that. He said, this stuff isn't any different than selling stuff online. He said it's just basically the same thing. And when they got to the camp, by the time they got round to Election Day, what's really interesting to me is that the Bloomberg article basically says he's going to lose. So why is he working so hard? Why is he trying so hard? And the best they could come up with, and many other articles made this claim also, was they were convinced that Trump was really trying to just get his hands on the RNC mailing list and get as many buyers off of it so that they became his names, and he was going to start a conservative TV network. Honest, I'm not making this up. And that he had no intention of winning the election, that he just was trying to sort of scam everybody so that he could start another business, which wouldn't have been a bad idea given his chances, even as late as say 6 o'clock on Election Day, 6 p.m., right? So by the time they got to the election, according to this Bloomberg article, Brad and his team had created over 100,000 versions of their ads. Let me say that again. 100,000 versions. Just on Facebook. And he used some other things too. That is amazing. And what were they using to evaluate that? They weren't evaluating stickiness. They may have used click-throughs, but mainly they were using bottom line sales, donations, and sales. And they were evaluating headlines, and they were evaluating copy and format, and they were trying everything and split testing everything. This is so amazing. You need to read this. You need to delve into this. And I don't care. It's not because, who knows how this will all work out with Trump and with the media and all the rest of it. I'm not telling you need to vote for him. I'm telling you, for your company, need to get involved with some old gray-haired direct marketers. You need to get us on board. You need to get conscious. I'm not even going to tell you how to do it. I'm not going to tell you how Brad did it. But I'll tell you one thing. One more big, important brick through a plate glass window. I sent Brad my article. And he was gracious enough to read it. And he said, well, we need to give some credit. The RNC did do a lot of modeling at the end. But see, it wasn't the end that mattered. It was the beginning when they had very little resources. Because if you're like me, you don't have 600 million to kick around. And you may not have big data, right, to make all this work. You need real data. You need hard data. And the way you get that is not by buying every source that you can find, by taking every Twitter feed and piling it into this data lake and getting 60 or 70 PhDs. You can't do that. You shouldn't do it. It's really almost pointless. You need one good direct marketer trumps 60 PhDs. And I know if you've got a PhD, you could be a good direct marketer. I know several that were great. Okay? But in general, there is this intellectual war between the academics, the mass media advertising agencies about how smart they are and how brilliant versus the guy selling hats. And for my money, the guy selling hats kicked their butts. And it was direct marketing. So anyway, I sent it off to Brad. And this is not like the media sending it to the Hillary Clinton campaign. Brad has no interest in this. He was gracious enough to read it. He wrote me back and he said, the RNC did give us more help than you hint at, which I didn't know, but that wasn't my point, right? My point was the direct marketing. But he said, you were right on the button. And he said, you're also right that the press, even the Bloomberg report, didn't get it right. They didn't understand what we were doing at all. They didn't understand how smart we were getting. And the Trump campaign had real behavior. They had people parting with $20 for a hat or whatever it was, the charge. I'm sure they did price testing also. And that's what we are faced with as marketers. We're faced with getting the guy to part with his $20 bill. And how do we do it? And it may be maybe $200 or maybe $1,000 or whatever it is, but it's the same puzzle. It's human behavior, and you can sit in your ivory tower and you can try to figure it out, or you can come down to earth with us junk mailers. Hire some old guys. Join the WDMA or the International Society for Strategic Marketing. That one isn't quite up and running yet, but the WDMA is. Very low price, very good. And we're going to have weekly or depending on when I get at it, but we're going to have regular discussion groups to talk about how direct marketing changes things, changes companies, gives us insight to allocate resources. That's what the Trump campaign did. Like him or hate him, I don't care. That's not the point. The point is, one guy knew direct marketing principles. I don't even know where he learned them. Seems like he was pretty much self-taught. And you know what? Most good catalogers are too. Most good mailers I know. The ones who test and test and test and test. Most of them are self-taught in some way, shape, or form. And that's going away. Already, half of my original board is either passed away or retired on the International Society for Strategic Marketing. Time is short. This is real power. I'm John Miglosh for the WDMA and the International Society for Strategic Marketing.